Hi, everybody. It is Mike, the Heal Your Gut Guy, and today I have a special guest. This is Nellie, and she uses fasting and German New Medicine to kind of help people get through their health issues. And so, welcome. I'm excited to have you on the show.
Hey, Michael. Yeah, thank you. I love these conversations. So very happy to be here.
Cool, cool. So, I was wondering if you could share like a success story that you had with, like maybe a digestive, one of your clients having digestive issues and how you used these two tools to help them out.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of my earliest clients was actually one of the coolest stories. It wasn't long after I began my business, which actually started out with the fasting programs. I kind of
Hmm.
came to know GNM and fasting about the same time, but I ran with the fasting and then I started integrating German New Medicine as we went. And so very, very early on, I had a woman come to me with Crohn's,
Hmm.
Crohn's disease or Crohn's symptoms, and they were really severe for her. She'd been on
Oh, wow.
medication. Yeah, hectic. So she'd been on medication and all the steroids and all the things since she was about 18. And this was going on 20 years now that
Wow.
she'd been, possibly even longer actually. I'm just thinking back. So she just dove straight into my 6-week fasting program, which was a week of prep, both mind and body, and then 4 weeks of fasting, and then 1 week guided break fast out.
Mhm.
And she noticed changes straight away with her Crohn's symptoms. So she had all the, the classic things, the bloating, diarrhea, really nasty stomach pains, and all sorts of things.
Mhm.
Noticed changes straight away. She dropped a heap of weight. And by the time we had her back on food, so by the end of the 6-week program, she was basically off of all medications and completely symptom free.
Oh, wow.
Now, yeah, right. So I was
Yeah.
like, whoa, these were even, so early on in my journey, these were results that even I was like, wow.
Hmm.
um, and I sort of gently integrated a bit of German New Medicine into that work. But that first one was predominantly the fasting process that
Hmm.
facilitated those results. Now, she basically didn't, this is where the story gets quite cool. She basically didn't have any symptoms or anything for about 6 months. So completely off medication, no symptoms, staying
Hmm.
really healthy and everything. And then all of a sudden one day she called me and she's like, I've just had a massive flare up, like completely out of the blue, don't know what's happened, don't know what's going on. And by this stage, I had gotten a bit deeper into the German New Medicine side of things. And so I took that route. Oh, actually, no, we did we tied them up together, right? So we put her pretty much directly on because she was about to go away on holiday. She's like, I can't go away like this.
Hmm.
So we threw her into a 3-day water bath. And I don't recommend jumping into that, by the way, unless you actually know what
Yeah,
you're
those
doing.
are, those are a lot of fun. What are you talking about?
Yeah. So please just know that she was guided in this as well. So she went into a 3-day water fast, which was obviously helping facilitate things on a physical level. And then I took the route with her of really diving into the GNM side of things because I had
Hmm.
explored that more by that stage. And so, from a German New Medicine perspective, Crohn's, the symptoms occur in the healing phase. There's 2 phases to
Hmm.
each program: conflict activity and healing phase. The symptoms occur in the healing phase. So, from my perspective, from that lens, I knew that she had probably just been through something that triggered her back on the track of her original conflict.
Hmm.
And then she was now, so she'd been through the conflict active phase and she was now in the healing phase again. And
Hmm.
so she'd had this flare up. And what we worked out, I just asked her about a heap of experiences. We went back and viewed her timeline of when the Crohn's symptoms originally started. Um, we'd done that in the original program. And what we discovered was that the symptoms started for her when she was about 18. And they started right around the time that their house was broken into.
Oh.
And the story goes basically that their house was broken into, but it was actually a like a wrongly conducted break-in, as in it wasn't their house that was meant to be hit. So as it turned out, the house next door was a suspected drug lab and drug production. So as it turned out, they actually think that the people that break into their house were meant to break into the house next door. So they didn't actually take a lot from this woman's house, but they did destroy a lot. They trashed the place, and some really sentimental items, and they got stuck into her dog, and yeah, it was a pretty traumatic event. And a lot of her Crohn's symptoms got worse when she would eat gluten and dairy, which is quite common for a lot of Crohn's sufferers. And what we worked out was that when they got the news that their house had been broken into, she was at the pub eating pizza.
Oh, okay.
What are two main ingredients or two main constitutions of pizza? We've got
gluten. Like dairy and gluten. Yeah.
Cheese, right?
Yeah.
So this is conducive with the track principle, which is that it's not the food itself necessarily causing the problem, but the food sets someone on a track. So that was one kind of part of it. So we knew that we determined that was the event that started the process, and she did find that really indigestible. She couldn't come to terms with it, and Crohn's is the indigestible morsel conflict, right? Really couldn't come to terms with that. And what had happened with this flare up is that house that they had been living in when that all happened had gone up for rent. The house was actually owned by her uncle. She had seen this house pop up on Facebook as coming up for rental, the original house that they lived in 20 odd years ago. And it had triggered her, and she had actually commented, "Oh, wow, this brings up a lot of memories, both good and bad." So the house, the refresher of the house had actually put her back on the track of the original event.
Wow.
And it was really, really clear and super fascinating. So fascinating. It was one of the first pivotal moments that I really went, whoa, this GNM stuff is like legit, right?
Yeah.
It was so clear to me. And so what we did is we had her go through a process of kind of, I guess, psychologically resolving that conflict in the psyche, whereby we really made sure that the psyche understood that that was a past event and that it no longer held any danger or relevance in her life. And just acknowledging that event. And once again, within 3 days, all symptoms dropped away, and she was symptom and medication free the last time I spoke to her. So there's your
that's really cool. That's a cool story. Yeah, it's always I just find German new medicine like so much more fun. Instead of like, oh, eat this, eat that, it just becomes like this boring conversation, whereas like you get into the drama of people's lives, and it's just so much more interesting. But a lot of questions that I get is like, how do you resolve, how you, okay, now we know it's the house, or, the house situation. How do I resolve this in the psyche? And for me, I'm like a tinkerer, inventor kind of a person. So I like to once I understand something, I can just go, oh, okay, that makes sense. It makes no sense that this would give me issues, and I can kind of like put it away. But I think it might be a little different for other people. What was that experience like for her, or what you normally see?
Yeah. In this instance, I guess it was really guided. And because I was pretty new to German new medicine, we were really feeling our way. But if I kind of look at your original question there, like, how do we use German new medicine? Like, how do we resolve things? Dr. Harmer always said that resolutions come in two ways. They either need to be practical or emotional, or not so much emotional, but based in the psyche. We need a perceptual change of the event. Now, we always look to practical first, because if we can do that and get someone out of immediate conflict and immediate danger, then great. And that often turns off the symptoms quite quickly. However, that's not always possible. And particularly when we're dealing with, past events, it just might not be possible.
Yeah.
The other thing I find with practical changes is that we can make a practical change, but then potentially we end up in similar circumstances. And if we're faced with the same thing again and we haven't learned how to change perception of the event in our psyche, then we run the risk of being in the same position again and starting up the same symptoms, right? So I kind of always like to do both. We look for a practical change. If we can get the person out of that situation, absolutely, by all means, particularly if they are in, real-time danger. Then, if we're talking about an abusive situation or something, like, absolutely, let's get the person right out of there. But then from there, I still think it's important to facilitate a psychological change, a perceptual change. So I use a range of different methods to help people achieve that. But effectively, bottom line is what we're looking for is to convince the psyche that there is no danger anymore, and that the original problem is not a problem. There's no danger. It doesn't need to help us adapt to survive or to thrive. And yeah, there's, like I said, there's lots of different ways I use that. NLP is great. The Martini method is fantastic. But one of the biggest things is, however you're going to get there, I find that changing the meaning of the event is huge. Like, if you can change the meaning of the original event, then it no longer controls you. You've totally changed the event. It's not considered dangerous by the psyche anymore. And one of the things I love so much about German medicine is that when we do that, we are not only creating and facilitating a physical change in the body, but there is huge personal growth and evolution to be found in doing something like that. If we can catch meaning from things, and if we can change perception like that on command when we want, we literally have like complete control over our lives, which is freaking cool.
Yeah, it's I suffered from Crohn's as well, and usually that manifests as anger issues, and I had an aggressive constellation, I'm pretty sure, and you just turn into a troll, and you're no fun to be around, even like with yourself sometimes. And it really does help out with the personal growth, because it just becomes because when you're a person with like an anger constellation, it just becomes like your default tool to like do just about everything. Like, that's like your tool to fix issues. And you just see the world like completely differently. It's like hard to even put into words, but it's like, we're shaped by our past experiences, and especially those traumatic events. They really shape us. But let's talk a little bit more about fasting, because it's been a long time since I've looked at fasting. So what would be, because a lot of the clients that I work with, a lot of them would be on the underweight side, like they don't have much weight to lose. So, and like a lot of them are probably dealing with malnutrition issues, like their skin and bones. So how would you advise them on like, how would you more recommend going on like a strict fast, or a certain type of intermittent fasting, or like, what are your opinions on that?
Yeah, sure. So from my perspective, there's different benefits in all the different types of fasting, right? And it really is about finding the style of fasting that suits the individual based on, like you said, their body weight, their body type, everything that's going on for them physically, but also their mental constitution and what they've experienced in life as well. So for someone who's perhaps experienced eating disorders or has been literally starved of any kind during their life, sometimes it's not appropriate to run straight to a fast. And when I say starved, that doesn't necessarily have to mean food. So it can also be things like starved for affection, for love, for attention, these sorts of things. So for those kind of candidates, I would probably work psychologically first to get them to a place of real safety and comfort before running into a fast. When we're talking about, someone who doesn't hold a lot of body weight physically, it is still possible to fast with a low body weight. What I find is that I have guided really lean, slim people through
Mm-hmm.
fast, and they have still been very effective. So the body tends to know where its threshold is. Like it will
Mm-hmm.
stop dropping weight when it knows like where its safety point is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but you just have to keep an eye on it. And it would
Mm-hmm.
be like, okay, maybe we don't put a really lean candidate through a 4-week fast. Maybe we put them through a 2-week fast or a 1-week fast, or, you know,
Mm-hmm.
it's really, really individually based on so many different things.
Mm-hmm.
What I would say is that personally, so I've done a number of different fasts when we're talking about prolonged fasts. So
Mm-hmm.
intermittent fasting and prolonged fasting are very different kettles of fish to me.
Yeah, yeah, they are.
Yeah. So I think, you know, most people can very safely and very effectively intermittently fast. In fact, I feel like it's potentially our natural way of
Mm-hmm.
doing anyway. And it's relatively easy to get into and to play with. When we step into the realm of extended fasting, personally, I wouldn't recommend doing a strict water fast at home or on your own.
I can't do it. I've tried to do it a few times, and like the third day I start like seeing things like, but
Yeah,
yeah.
right.
Anyways.
It's full on. So I've played with both. I have been able to really successfully juice fast at
Mm-hmm.
home. That's what I tend to guide my clients through as well. When it comes
Mm-hmm.
to water fasting, it's like a whole nother level, right? And I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure some people do it at home. I did a 16-day water fast at home. But that was after quite a few juice fasts and a
Mm-hmm.
lot of research and a lot of build up to it. And even then, I felt like I still didn't get quite as much out of it as I perhaps would have if I was on something like a retreat or being
Mm-hmm.
guided as well, even with, you know, my knowledge and my background. So
Mm-hmm.
water fasting, yeah, particularly for someone who is of low body weight, I really wouldn't recommend without guidance, and ideally without personal one-on-one, like in-person guidance, so on a retreat or
Oh
something.
wow. Okay. Yeah.
That's just my look. Some people will recommend differently, but that's been my experience and my personal recommendation is to
No,
get the most.
I'm glad that you say that because it's I tried it a few times and I was like, wow, like getting through the first day is rough, and then like the second and the third day come around, and I'm just like, I gotta eat something. Like I'm gonna go crazy. So.
Yeah, it's full on. And I just don't feel like you get the full emotional benefits out of doing a water fast at home as well. It really is
Mm-hmm.
next level. Like it can be such a deep spiritual experience as well as
Mm-hmm.
physical. And I
Mm-hmm.
just think that with all the distractions of home and
Yeah.
everyday life,
Well,
you
I
probably,
was working and like going to work and stuff. I had an office job, but I was yeah. So,
yeah, not
um,
ideal. So yeah, personally, I'd say go on a retreat if you want to do a water fast.
mm-hmm.
Build up to it. When it comes to juice fasting, this is what I guide my clients through predominantly, and I think this
Mm-hmm.
can be done quite safely and effectively at home, so long as you know what you're doing and so long as you
Yeah.
prepare for it properly, and so long as you listen to the body about when it
Mm-hmm.
genuinely wants to break fast.
Yeah.
So even if somebody has set a goal of like 7 days, 14 days, 21 days, 28, whatever it is, 3 months, like it's great to have that goal in mind, but you have to listen to the body. And there will
Mm-hmm.
come a point, as a very, very discernible point, if you're listening properly, where
Mm-hmm.
things shift from, oh, I really want to eat, and that compulsion to eat, which is more habit and boredom, when it changes from that, eh, there's like a distinct click over into the body going,
Mm-hmm.
I need to eat now. Like this
Yeah.
is my threshold. You need to put some nourishment in me. So really listening into that is super important, whatever body weight you are. Juice fasting, I do find that it gives the digestive system the break that is required to facilitate a lot of
Mm-hmm.
healing, but you do get a nutritional
Mm-hmm.
dose from the juices and from what's happening there, and you do get a bit of energy, so you can kind of make it through the day. Most people I know still continue to work just at perhaps a slower pace, and I don't recommend going to the gym or going for any muscular breakdown on any kind of fast, basically.
Yeah, I was on I was doing like a honey water / juice fast, and I was doing pretty well. I had like an office job, so I was just like being a sloth, trying not to be very conservative with my energy. And then I was kind of getting bored, maybe like a week or so into it, and my friend was like, "Hey, let's go to the gym." I did rock climbing, and but rock climbing is all about conserving energy. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna do the really easy climbs, and I'm gonna climb like a sloth. And of course, like my competitive nature, I was like, oh, I could do that one. And I muscled through one. And I remember when I came home, I was like a T-Rex. Like I'd used way too much energy.
Yeah.
But
yeah, you really don't want to go for any kind of muscular breakdown on a fast, because there's nothing, we're not putting anything in to rebuild it. So I kind of say, like, the rule of thumb is, keep your heart rate under like 100 BPM, and basically where you can still talk without getting out of breath is where you want to stay. So gentle, yoga, some Pilates, walking's great. Definitely get out and about and, in the sunshine and fresh air. So walking's fantastic, but yeah, we don't want to push it. It's a rest period. Like you're meant to be.
It's a rest period. And it's built into a lot of the popular religions of the world. There's usually at least, like 2 or 3 holidays where you're doing some form of intermittent fasting or, like full on fasting.
Yeah, massively. Like pretty much every culture across the globe has some element of fasting and restriction. And I really think that periods of fasting would have been a natural component of the way we lived and eat. If you want to go back, to primal days, caveman days, like I don't think that there would have been food around all the time. I just don't think we would have been consuming in the ways that we are today. I think there definitely would have been rest periods for the digestive system built in there naturally.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people look at fasting as like this, like this cure. It's like a magic pill sort of a thing. And I think it has like a very specific role in the healing process. And German new medicine makes this, painfully apparent that disease, Hippocrates, disease starts in the gut. Disease starts in the psyche. It starts with that traumatic event. You get those symptoms when you resolve the conflict, and then you just get trapped in the healing phase through the tracks. And, I sound like a broken record talking to my Crohn's and colitis patients. They'll be talking about like, oh, I'm going to try this. I'm going to go try this. And I go, can you guess what I'm going to say? You need to identify, neutralize your, I don't care what else you do, identify and neutralize your tracks. This is the most important thing you can do. And fasting is great. It helps speed up the healing process. But you can do a 2-week fast, and then the second you come out of that fast, just run headfirst into a bunch of tracks, and you just did that 2 weeks for absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
So
100%. And like you've pretty much nailed it there. And I'd actually love to have more conversations around the role of fasting with other GNM practitioners in the community, because I think there's a lot to learn. So when I first came across fasting and had my experiences with it, I was like, whoa, holy crap, this is amazing. This is the thing. This is the cure kind of thing. Because I was seeing such profound results with it, both in myself and in others straight away. But like you said, then we would come off of the fast and then things would, come back or pop up again. And yeah, when I started integrating German new medicine into the fasting, that's when the results just skyrocketed. And I saw a much longer term success rate. So my suspicion, and like I said, this needs a lot more conversation around it, and I'd love to have this convo with like lots of other people in the GNM community, So my suspicion is that, like you've said, it kind of fast tracks the healing phase. Obviously, when we're giving the digestive, and I have found that fasting works more effectively and more efficiently for some particular programs, and for some in conflict active phase and some in healing phase. And there's different kind of.
I didn't think about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So particularly when it does seem to have a really good effect when we're dealing with digestive problems. And I suspect that's because of that. A couple of things. One, because we are giving the whole system a complete break. So it really can concentrate on healing. It's like you can't fix a car while it's running, right?
Yeah. So let's change the tire while we're going down the road,
Right. Yeah. Well, like let's do something with the engine while we're going 100K down the highway. It's like it doesn't work.
The analogy I like to use is fasting and intermittent fasting is the closest you can get to putting your gut in a cast. Like if you're going to heal a broken bone, it goes in a cast.
Yeah.
You don't move it for like literally 3 months.
Yeah, that's awesome. I totally agree with that.
Can't do that with the digestive system. And then you also have issues like, GERD and acid reflux. And the lighter the meal, like the less time that the food spends in the stomach, the less irritate, because the less like stomach acid your stomach has to make to digest that food, like the less pain and damage is going to get into those ulcers and stuff. And then it's just the whole convert, like you're saving energy, because we forget digestion takes up so much energy and resources from the body. So
totally. So this is something I often say as well, is like, if you imagine you've got an army of 100 men or women or whatever they are for you, you've got an army of 100 people. And when we're constantly eating, it's like a large portion of those candidates have to be on duty of digestion, of doing a job. But when we fast, we effectively eliminate that job almost entirely. So then we've got this army of people who all of a sudden they're like, oh, I have free time and free energy. Like I can go and fix stuff, do stuff and sort stuff out. And I suspect that's part of what's happening in that healing phase, is like there's a lot more resource available. We're resting the system and there's a lot more resource available to go to either degrading the tissue or rebuilding the tissue, depending on what germ layer we're looking at from a GNM perspective. The other thing that I believe happens with a fast and that goes towards the healing process is that when we fast, there's a lot of emotional space. And so we're not distracted with food, basically, and we're not pushing down.
All your food tracks are gone, at least for the time being.
But also, if we look at this from like quite a spiritual, emotional point of view, we're not pushing down with food, right? We're not distracting. We're not suppressing a lot of stuff. And the mental and emotional clarity that I get when I fast is profound. A lot of stuff can come up very clearly. And I find that candidates, including myself, have found it a lot easier to determine and address emotional concepts and traumas and events when they're fasting, because it's like that space, that mental emotional space for things to come up. There's a lot higher intuition, a lot higher connection with the body. So I suspect that has a role to play as well in figuring out from a GNM perspective what's going on with the gut tracts.
Did you ever have any experience? There's this thing called the raw milk fast, the raw milk diet, and it's pretty popular, like in the carnivore, less than a price community. And these doctors had really good success rates with all sorts of disorders. And you today you don't see the same success rate. And I think that's because one of the big things, there's one book about it by a guy named Dr. Porter, like back in the 1900 or something like that. And one of the big things that he emphasizes, which no one really talks about, is the people were on bed rest. And again, they couldn't do anything else but drink milk, because they like literally had to drink like a cup of milk every 30 minutes to get the amount of milk that they needed. But the big thing is, like, there was no TV, There was no radio. There was no internet. They weren't in town. They didn't have work. They weren't allowed to talk to people. So like they really had to sit there and be by themselves. I'm sure the first 2 days were super boring, but just like they have to like settle their mind and be in a space where they can get through this boredom. And I imagine like that helped out quite a bit with the process.
Definitely. That's super interesting. And I had the raw milk fast is actually one I haven't looked into a lot, but just hearing you sort of explain that a little bit then is fascinating. And already my mind goes, okay, well, one, we took away all distractions and pretty much all possibility for tracks and triggers, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
We just wiped out, like, I think
you're out of your environment. There's no family members. There's no cell phones and stuff. So
yeah, and it's similar to what I was saying about the water fast. Like I really feel to get the most out of a water fast, you need to be on a retreat or something where you're again away from all those distractions. From my perspective, the media feeds us so much conflict and so much reason.
Boy, yeah.
Tracks and triggers. So we don't have a TV in this household and we don't really engage with mainstream media. That's like one of the reasons I swear we're so healthy, because we've just completely knocked out one whole element of tracks and triggers and conflicts, right? We've diminished the possibility for those to come in. So yeah, hearing you talk about that style of fasting, it's like, okay, one, we're knocking out heaps of distractions, which eliminates the possibilities for conflicts, tracks, and triggers. Secondly, like you said, bed rest, you got time with yourself. Inner processing those distractions or those lack of distractions also means that it's internal processing time. Again, stuff can come up and we can deal with it. And then the other thing is there is a quite a strong some thoughts around, like if we're talking real raw milk, unprocessed, pasteurized, homogenized, like the real deal, not the fake stuff, then potentially the microbial content of that may be playing a role in also assisting healing phases in terms of breakdown or rebuilding of tissue. So yeah, there's a few different elements there that I could see that potentially have real value in them. Be interested to look into that. So thanks for the heads up on that one.
Yeah, it's I always feel like I always had trouble, doing like the fasting, but I could raw milk fast for, where I drink like somewhere between a liter or 2 or maybe 3 liters of raw milk. I could do that for weeks. I'm good with that. So
does your energy feel really good when you're on the raw milk fast?
Oh yeah. But that's just like my favorite food in the world. So raw milk. So that's my special thing. And if you get bored of that, you can kind of do other raw dairy products like yogurt and stuff. But again, it's, there's a million different ways to do a fast. And, the things I think we want to emphasize is, German new medicine, tells us that it starts in the psyche. And, it's great to do a fast and to, rest your digestive system. It's a tool to rest your digestive system. And it could also be a tool to kind of help purge your brain a little bit. But we want to stress that it starts in the psyche, and it's for most of your colitis and your Crohn's sufferers, it's the tracks, and conflict relapses and stuff like that. So
on loops is really what produces the IBS and the Crohn's symptoms. So again, they occur in the healing phase, but you're going into conflict activity and then healing phase. That's where the symptoms occur. But yeah, you've really nailed it there. I see fasting as a really profound tool. It really is like quite amazing. I've seen it, help facilitate some incredible results. But I think that is because it is a supporting tool, not the cure. Like you said, it gives both the body and the mind space to do what it needs to do. But ultimately, it is still the body that heals itself. Like no one can do that for you. No tool can do that. No external resource can do that. No drug can do that. No herb can do that. The only person that can do that is you and your body. And you have to be willing to dig in deep and acknowledge and recognize and resolve those core conflicts and the loops and the tracks and the triggers, as you say. And that's where I believe people will really, really find the long-lasting benefits. And then all these beautiful holistic tools on top, certainly by all means, can help.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your practice, some of the services that you offer. I know you have like a timeline thing, which I really like.
Yeah, the timeline is part of my academy. So it's called the New Earth Wellness Empowered Health Academy. That one's very German New Medicine focused. So it's an introduction to German New Medicine, but it's also, I really spend a lot of time and a big focus on the how to implement German New Medicine into one's life, because that was what was really missing for me when I first started exploring it. I was like, oh my goodness, this information is so amazing, but how do I use it? How do I create resolutions? How do I facilitate change? How do I determine my tracks and triggers? So the academy is one of my offerings. And then I do still have my fasting programs, which is that's called the Gain Life Fast. So that's the guided fasting process, and I do deeply integrate German New Medicine into that work now as well. So we work with the fasting as a physical tool and an emotional space tool, and then we use the German New Medicine knowledge to help people determine their conflicts, their tracks, and their triggers. And then I've got some other one-on-one offerings as well. But welcome to reach out with any questions or anything you want to check out. Go for it. I'd be happy to help.
Cool. Well, I'll leave your link down below in the description, and you guys can check her out there. But thank you so much for sharing your stories and helping us, seeing how to use fasting and German New Medicine together to help us get results faster. So thank you.
Thanks, cool. You're most welcome. It was fun, Michael. Thanks so much for the invitation.
Cool. Bye. Bye, everybody.
Beautiful. See ya.